So I was looking for like pictures for my mom's birthday, which was coming up. And I happened to stumble across this video, and I had no idea what it was. So I have actually not seen it, but I'm pretty sure I remember exactly where it was taken. But this video was my really good friend from business school, Nick Hungerford, who unfortunately has passed away, but was an entrepreneur very much like myself, founded this company out of Stanford called Nutmeg. He and I were both entrepreneurs, you know, launching our companies as students, like right out of business school. And I think what he was doing is he had built this kind of mentorship program at Stanford. And I was one of the mentors that was kind of giving advice to students and telling them what was hard about starting a company at a school. And I'm pretty sure I'm in the Stanford cafeteria. So let's see what it has.
So we're here with Brendan Wallace, founder of Identified.com. Brendan, tell us what the biggest sacrifices you made.
First of all, it's like already a period piece because I'm wearing clearly a Notre Dame hat. I look like I'm about 14, and I have like one of those ridiculous bracelets that people were wearing that was like magnetic at the time.
At university, starting your business at the same time as doing school.
Well, at Stanford, at the GSB, I would say the biggest sacrifice was you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to school. At the time we were starting Identified, we had 4 employees working full-time for us. We had 10 investors, we had $1 million in the bank. So just the obligations of managing that and those employees was so much that, you know, every day after school I was going directly to our office and working. So I would say it was not so much the social. Oh yeah, actually, so this was the first company I founded. So me and Adeyemi Ajao, who was my roommate at Stanford, we had the idea to start a recruiting platform that would leverage basically this new thing at the time, social media, to target people for jobs that, you know, weren't being targeted on LinkedIn. Our idea was that LinkedIn was kind of this white collar, you know, recruiting platform, but we could do something very similar for more semi-skilled and more kind of blue-collar labor. And we could help people get jobs with social media. And even though I look like I knew what I was talking about, I'm positive I knew nothing about what I was talking about. And we'd probably raised like a few $100,000. And I'm talking breathlessly about all the sacrifices I've had to make, not knowing that the amount of sacrifices I'm about to have to make are going to dwarf what I've just gone through. So there's something funny in that too. This is that I had to make it was more the academic sacrifices, and that we really just don't have time. The academic sacrifices in number 3 or 4, if you're lucky. So, you know, Stanford has a lot to offer, and the GSB does actually have some amazing classes, especially around entrepreneurship. But when you're actually, you know, running your own business, you don't have the time or the energy to actually absorb everything that Stanford has to offer. Like, for example, when we started Identified, we didn't even go to the CES at all. Like, we didn't have time. Oh, so it has great resources. We just didn't have time to use them. So in retrospect, I wish I had actually taken more time to experience and learn from all the resources that Stanford has. But this is actually, I was clearly throwing some shade at the Stanford, I think it was the Entrepreneurship Society or Entrepreneurship Group. But the ironic thing was there's a total misnomer. It wasn't actually about encouraging students to start companies. It was about encouraging them to learn about starting companies, but not actually start them. And because we kind of took it to its logical extreme and actually started a company in school, they really didn't like that, because that in turn put pressure on our ability to attend classes and be involved in student life. And I was a bit irked at this. I remember, I'm not saying it as explicitly because I'm still, I think, a student here. So I probably was tempering my displeasure at Stanford's entrepreneurship group or whatever it was. It wasn't encouraged to start a company as a student. Now I think they strongly encourage it, and they have classes whose very premise is for students to start companies. That is the output of the class that is succeeding at the class. I think there might have been some like early things like that, but Yeah, it was definitely more fringe when we did it. It's certainly bringing back memories for me of like how much friction I encountered in the early days of building Identified, and probably how much of that experience overcoming that friction and having to figure things out on the fly and building the airplane as you're flying it, so to speak, all of that I probably brought to bear in the next companies that, you know, I founded, including Fifthwall. And yeah, so this was like me getting my first taste of this like tidal wave of not knowing that was headed my way as an entrepreneur. And Nick, you know, my late friend, he was, I would say, very much at the vanguard of this. He entered Stanford, and he was an inspiration for me because he knew from the moment he, you know, walked in the first day, he knew that he was going to be an entrepreneur. He knew exactly what kind of company he was going to start. He knew exactly what he was going to do. He had the idea. He had the vision. I did not. I developed it as a student, but he came in with the explicit intent of starting a company, and he succeeded. Nutmeg, I think, was one of the largest robo-managers in Europe, and he sold it very successfully. So Nick, the guy interviewing me here, was an inspiration to myself and to Adeyemi.
You made the choice to come here, and then you made the choice to start Identified whilst you were here.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea of the sacrifices that you would have to make, or did you think you would be able to run it in parallel in a much easier and seamless fashion than actually happened?
Well, I knew that, you know, if you're just doing schoolwork at Stanford at the GSB, you get a lot of free time unless you're doing something wrong. Oh, wow, I'm throwing quite a bit of shade at Stanford. Unnecessarily so. Also, I wanted to do something. I could either just drink and party more, travel more, or start a business. I chose the latter. And I would say, no, I didn't realize how much time that would actually consume and the amount of problems that would introduce that I just didn't really think about. Now, in retrospect, I don't think I really would have done anything different. I think I probably would have actually tried to raise less money than I did up front, because the demands of having, at the time we had $1.5 million in the bank, were probably unnecessary. Okay, that's wrong. We were students, that's 100% wrong. We faced I said I raised too much money, and I should have raised less money. That is like completely wrong. And there's no scenario in which that would ever be right at the stage company we were at. You should always raise more money than you think you need. I don't know whether I'm justifying the fact that we didn't raise as much money as I want retroactively to myself, or I actually think this is strategic and thoughtful. But the one thing is, it's clearly wrong, and I had no idea how wrong I was. And I think I was about to find out in like 6 months how wrong I was. So what I'm saying with a lot of confidence right now is very wrong. And now I know how wrong it is. Faced an uphill battle in raising that money from VCs, from angel investors, because we were unwilling to drop out of school. So both myself and my co-founder, who were both students here, second-year students at the time, we were not willing to drop out of school, and that's something that a lot of investors want you to do because it's kind of the proven path. That's true. Dedicated, committed entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you very much. So final question. You mentioned in there were some problems that came after you decided to start the business. Can you highlight any of those, or choose any, apart from perhaps the option to drop out of school, that were really, really meaningful to you, maybe in terms of what you gave up with friends or other Stanford things?
One thing that was very hard is I started the company with a friend who was also a classmate with me, and that's Adeyemi. And early on, we were such a small, insignificant company. Like, I couldn't hire anyone. We were such a small, insignificant company. In retrospect, we're still a small, insignificant company when I'm recording this video. We're like 4 people. And so we had this awkward situation where we were students at the time. They were working full time. This guy had actually flown out from New York. He was living on our sofa for 4 months, helping me launch the business. And there kind of came a point where I realized that there was a better hire for the role that he was fulfilling, or he was doing right, for me. And the awkwardness of me being in school and having to make that decision was incredibly... This is actually kind of funny. We were students. We lived my second year at this house, which was like a house outside of Stanford in Woodside. And we had like 9 students all living in this house. It wasn't very luxurious at all. I think it was like we were kind of crammed in there. And some of the people that we hired moved out from, some cases, New York. I forget all the places they had moved from, but they were living at our house. So we had like 12, 13 people living at our house. And as you can imagine, my roommates didn't love that. And they were like sleeping on our sofa, and we barely had an office. We literally had a garage that we were working out of at this like med-device company that we had managed to secure. But it almost feels like something like you could have scripted it as a movie, but it was just silly. I mean, I didn't know how prototypical it would ultimately become. Like they would like make movies about this exact kind of model, like people living on sofas, starting a company, not knowing what they're doing, people still being in school. But that is precisely the situation we found ourselves in. And to continue like how this story ended, we grew this company. We raised, I think, $35 million over a series of different venture rounds. And then Workday, the big public enterprise software company, they acquired us and we became Workday Recruit. And it was an awesome exit for us, for our investors, for our employees. But what's so funny looking back on this is like I'm a wide-eyed student with no concept of how difficult what I just set out to do is, how much it's going to impact my life negatively and positively. And I'm speaking with such authority, or I'm pretending to have such authority about the future and who we are. And naivete is actually a superpower, that not knowing what you just got yourself into is one of the most powerful things in entrepreneurship. There's this famous quote from Elon Musk that says, what is it like to be an entrepreneur? And he describes it as chewing glass and staring into the abyss. And I think anyone that has started a company can empathize with what that feels like. You feel like that at certain times. You never feel like that when you have the idea and you start it. I didn't feel like this right now, but I was about to feel like that. And yeah, it makes you kind of relish the immaturity, the naivete, the optimism, the kind of like quixotic view of what the future holds and how easy this is going to be, that enables people to build things in the first place. And I think for people that have a friend in their life that's starting a company, or if they're starting something themselves, reflecting on that is important. Like it probably is a useful lesson for me right now. Like I have no idea how hard what I'm going to encounter in the future of Fifth Wall or anything else that I do in the future is, but not knowing is the most important thing. It's actually an asset. It's not a liability. And that is the propulsive power of entrepreneurship. It's actually, it's grounded in a certain optimism. But this is an amazing video. One thing this is reminding me of is how awesome a person Nick Hungerford is and was. Nick was a really good friend of mine, was an inspiration to me in starting Identified and starting Fifth Wall, one of my closest friends. And what he did so well and so effortlessly is he acted as a mentor to other entrepreneurs. And I think he filled a mentorship gap that I was candidly throwing some shade at Stanford's institutional ability to provide. He did it on his own, independently, in a way that was just awesome and makes me miss him. It also makes me miss Stanford and miss these early days. But yeah, I'm glad I dug up this video from the vault.